All right, you ready?
Sure. Kel.
You good? Okay, you call this meeting to order. Business meeting, December 15th, 2020. Let's all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Some announcements, just quick ones. We do have our board member, Todd Gilbert, is virtual tonight, personal reasons. Christina Rajat is absent tonight for personal reasons. Okay. So can I have a motion to adopt an agenda? Bob is first, Gusta is second. Can I have a, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Todd's good? Okay. Motion passes. Okay, at this point, let's, Grace, I'm going to let you go first for comments tonight.
So, not too much recently. Day of Dialogue is tomorrow. I'm happy to
1 second, Mrs. Hoffman, can you just pass the microphone down?
Oh,
she can,
absolutely, absolutely.
pick up on it.
Yes, it's on. There you go. Thank you. All right, so the Day of Dialogue is tomorrow. I'm happy to be participating in that. And then on the 17th, we have another professionalism meeting for the Equity, Diversity, Inclusivity Committee. And I believe we'll be going over the form that me and Joyce Wu made last time. That can be used to evaluate the profile of a Shen employee. And also, happy holidays, everyone. But that's it for me today.
Naomi? Oh, that's all right, I'm just going to go run.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Hello, everyone. And wow, this is our last board meeting of this school year. It's hard to believe that we're here already. Okay, so there's much going on in the district, but instead of listing off a stream of things, and thanks to Grace, I don't need to say some of those things, so thank you for talking about the Day of Dialogue. That's exciting that that's tomorrow. I wanted to share a little bit about an event that happened this weekend that sort of showcases the hard work that our administrators and staff and teachers have been doing. And that was the FLL Robot Rumble. That was pretty exciting because it's the only event that I'm aware of that's been held in this district the entire school year. And I know we still have a ways to go before the school year is called done, but there was a lot of behind the scenes work. And I had to first thank Dr. Robinson with your support and connecting me with the right people. So things did move along, and I can't say enough about that. Thank you. There were many volunteers and parents, but I want to recognize some administrators that really went above and beyond the call of duty to make this happen, because this was a heavy lift. This wasn't easy because of the pandemic. But they are Mrs. Carmen, she's here tonight, thank you. Mrs. Barra, Mrs. Saliker, who's also here tonight. Mrs. Mitchell, she's the head of maintenance in high school leads. Mr. Mars, he actually set up the Google Meet and also provided the microphones, and Mr. Myers, who also helped set up. This just would not have happened without them. I mean, hands down, it was pretty amazing. The kids had a good time, and our staff administrators, everyone's commitment to this, commitment to the kids was evident, and they worked extra hard. So a lot of people were nervous, but it happened, and we stayed right on schedule. We were out of the building completely by 2 o'clock, so it was pretty exciting to say that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking tonight, but I do want to wish my board colleagues, Dr. Robinson, our administrators, Ms. Perna, our board rep, the teachers and staff in our district, a very Merry Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever your faith is. I wish you a happy holiday season, a healthy holiday season, and a different type of normal for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gusta?
Along those lines, was thinking today what I wanted to talk about, and I realized that I stopped for a second. I thought to myself, we're in week 12. That we need to stop and say, oh my God, we're in week 12, and that we need getting us here, making it happen. Wishing everybody a happy holiday season and a healthy one, and I look forward to moving on.
Thanks, Gus. Todd, do you have any thoughts?
I'll make my comments quick. Obviously, happy holidays to everyone, and be safe. I'm going to do a plead. Until you have somebody close to you that has COVID or you've experienced it yourself, you don't know what it does. We can see now across the news the rise in cases associated with people from Thanksgiving. And, you know, for the sake of our kids, for the sake of our family, I'm just asking everybody, please be safe over Christmas, over the holidays. Yes, you want to visit with family. Maybe this isn't the year to do that. Think about everybody else. And, you know, please think about what you're doing. My fear personally is that the numbers that we see right now are nothing compared to what's going to happen 2 weeks after Christmas. So please, for the sake of our kids, just be safe.
Thank you, Todd. Bob?
A few things I will speak to real quickly, and then also how we change our scheduling. Well, we normally have the athletes at this meeting to recognize the fall season, but we've gone through a series of championships. I would like to point out the unique thing that we did as Shen for the girls soccer season. And that was a championship, I believe it was with Burnt Hill.
Shaker. No economy.
And so, I read about it in the paper, but I think it needs to be said, reminded at a board meeting, is that the opportunity to gain a championship at our opponent's expense, we do take advantage of. We want to earn championships on a field of competition, and rather than accepting a forfeiture, I think at the last minute, our athletic director, Chris Coleman, advised or directed or approved by Dr. Robinson, a conversation was had that we're not going to accept the championship, we'll vote co-champions. I think the message we set throughout the district is that we'll always be a tough competitor. We'll always be someone that opposing teams will both want to compete and also fear to some extent because of our ability and our coaching and our players. But also we're a class act. We're not going to accept a forfeiture at someone else's expense. So thank you very much for that. The other thing that I think is a change in schedule is several months ago, what we put forward where we thought our discussions on racism and inequity would be brought forward, but obviously with the loss of Mr. DeLallo and just I think a lot of the COVID expectations that have come through, probably not going to happen tonight, okay, because there are things that we're talking about that are very important to how we will proceed as a board. But I look forward to that resuming next year at our January meeting. I have attended both the subcommittee on curriculum instruction on diversity. Very impressed with the curriculum that is out there that we're looking at, ways to improve what teachers put in front of our students. And also I'm seeing the same thing at the elementary school level with my work with the Scano partnership team. The quality of what we can put in front of our students that can make a difference is there. And what I don't see, and I think that this is something we may want to think about as we proceed into January, is Dr. Robinson's pointed out that a lot of what needs to happen are these uncomfortable conversations. Being comfortable with having those. Not seeing those with our groups yet. Okay, I think we've kind of talked about it, but I think that is part of addressing inequity and racism is making sure that we factor that in. I think we'll rise to the challenge of getting there. It's simply that we proceed up until we see that. Thank you very much. That's all for me.
Thanks, Bob. A few things. I just want to give a little bit more clarity. Bob was talking about change in schedules, so we would have had athletes here tonight. I talked to Dr. Robinson about that, and just change cancel culture, right? Cancel culture. I said that usually when we bring these teams in, it's usually all the team, and we wouldn't be able to do that. So why don't we put off to another time when we could see more of the teams coming in? And what a fantastic fall season we had. Both Mrs. Miller and I witnessed firsthand the amount of dedication and hard work on both the coaches and the teams that went out there to compete this year, and just astounding. So hats off to Chris Coleman and his coaching staff. The other piece I did want to talk about tonight was also, I have attended several, there was two, NYSBA NISBA webinars on legislative activities that are coming up. Again, I keep talking about this. We have to keep our eyes on. It's not just what's happening in front of us here at New York State or what the governor is saying. You know, we are affected by what happens at the federal hand. So in the coming months, we will see what will happen with that state aid, with that 20% that we keep talking about, with the state aid, and just trying to get ahead in how this legislative season will look much different, and how we will talk to the legislative body down in Albany. So hopefully tonight, Dr. Robinson will speak to that as well, some thoughts that he might have. But really, we are certainly not out of the woods. Yes, the vaccine is coming. From an economic standpoint, it's still kind of grim. And like Todd had said, the next couple of months are not going to be the best for us. So with that, I look forward to Dr. Robinson's comments tonight. And yeah, so let me go on about my announcement. We don't have any, do we have students?
Yes, we have.
We have the one? Okay.
So we have our student
Jane?
rep. You want to offer some comments?
Hi, Chang.
Hi,
Oh, Trinity's there?
Trinity's
Okay,
up.
I didn't see Trinity.
yes. First off, I want to say good evening to everyone. Thank you for having us again. There is not really any new announcements really to be made, but we can talk about some of the things that Senate is doing this year to sort of spread out some school spirit rather than fundraising events. So we are going to be hosting a pet show, and we also are going to be hosting a video game tournament. Now, we are working on, as we're working to further school spirit, we are also putting together a newsletter that will be sent out by the FFA Senate to the student body. So on our newsletter, there will be the dates for these events. As of right now, the dates are pending. They're not really solidified. So on the newsletter, the dates will be there as well. So just stay tuned for all the great things that we're going to be doing. Thank you to everyone that has been pushing forward with the different committees. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which I'm a part of, has been great. And it's a really great community for not only having those conversations, but also furthering the action behind those conversations. So I personally really appreciate that. So thank you.
Trinity, can you tell me more about the pet show?
Okay. So, and you can feel free to jump in as well on the pet show. But the basics of the pet show, as of right now, we're still planning of it, of course. But what we'll be doing is be having a virtual pet show where we'll have teachers or faculty members as the judges, and there will be multiple chances for students to win prizes on behalf of their pets. So their first off would be different categories, maybe for example like the best dressed pet or the most athletic pet or the funniest pet, things like that, where students can allow themselves to submit a video to show off their pets, or we will either be having it on a Google Meet. We haven't solidified this yet at all, but we'll be having either in a Google Meet or some emission of videos while we'll show it on a Google Meet. But just our pets, having fun, the students around us having fun with their pets, and the teachers and faculty members will be the judges of the pet show. So we're really looking forward to it. I think it's a marvelous idea. We have Scott Dackett as the chair for this committee, so I'm really excited.
Well, that's great. You got to think outside of the box. That's great.
Yeah, and to add to that a little bit, we wanted to make one of the prizes actually like a donation to a pet. I don't know what it's called, but like a donation.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Great. Great ideas. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, we were wanting to extend Grace's term because she did such a great job. And we want like the scheduling to be from the start of the school year to end of the school year because it just matches up with our like the Senate officer schedule and
Yep, so what Dr. Robinson and I had discussion on that. I think what we talked about the last time we mentioned this is we were going to meet just to have a quick meeting and discuss it. Because at the very start of this, it was the board that kind of put this together. So we'd like to present to the board, because it is a board idea, and then have a meeting and discuss with everybody, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Okay. So this is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. Because this meeting is being held with a limited in-person attendance, if you are a district resident, please send questions, comments via boe@shenschools.org. All questions, comments come into the Office of the Public Information Officer and are shared with the board and the superintendent. The board will not address specific questions, comments, but ask for your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions, concerns are typically addressed by the superintendent and/or designee. I didn't have anything from the public that was sent to me.
We're having a follow-up with some.
Yeah, okay. So at this point, Dr. Robinson, offer comments?
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. Stevenson. So we have several presentations tonight on the agenda. But before doing so, let me make sure, yes, we are on. Just want to offer some comments related to our budget, even though it's not on the agenda. Today, the Board of Regents issued their proposal to the legislature. And that's always the first signal for school districts to see where we're going and the potential of state aid impact. And so the Board of Regents proposal is essentially asking the state legislature and the governor to hold school districts harmless to the 2019-2020 state aid amount. And so this is just my mask here. I feel awkward having it off and I feel muffled having it on. So I'm stuck between two worlds, so I'll go with muffled. So the interesting piece of that, when you think about it, the last time that we actually had a full quote-unquote year was the 2019-2020 school year. So there's some logic to that. There's also implied in that the assumption of schools having almost a natural gap, financial gap, because 2019-20 school state aid is at this level. However, the reality is of it, costs have increased for schools over this year, and then as we plan for 21-22, costs are going up. What I mean by costs, you have contractual obligations where there are built-in adjustments in contracts. You have the increased costs related to COVID expenses that, quite frankly, which no one knew was going to be that we're dealing with this year and anticipate that we may very well be dealing with some of those costs into next year. So, yes, we applaud the Board of Regents for trying to create a baseline that's workable for schools and recognizing the fiscal realities of the state. And so if that becomes the worst case scenario, that's a great start. And so that goes to the second part of my comment then in terms of if that becomes the worst case scenario. As you're also aware, there's been conversations, and those conversations are heating up even more so now at the federal level in terms of a potential federal stimulus for states across the country, in this case, New York. And there's a lot more interest on both sides of the aisle than any time over the past 8 months or so. And there's also an increased excitement, if you will, particularly with some of the statement that now officially President-elect Biden has made, as well as First Lady Dr. Biden has made, who's an educator. So it's great that we have the administration publicly applauding the need for federal support of schools. So that gives us some comfort to know that federal funds are on the horizon. Two things with that is, one, what's the amount? Two, I guess it's three. Second thing is, what's the timing of it? And the third, what are the strings attached to it? Which then lends to another piece that we have to watch very closely is New York has, and I'm pretty sure it's constitutional, they don't exactly quote me to that, but there's something called a maintenance of effort standard. In other words, so if the New York budget gap is whatever, $14 billion or $20 billion, and so let's just use 20 for conversation purposes, and New York gets $18 billion in stimulus funds, so there's still a $2 billion gap, right, in that equation. The maintenance of standard efforts say, well, you can't shift that $2 billion on schools only. In other words, we're still going to cut schools because we don't have a full net zero, because then it has to be an equal distribution or some kind of distribution, so one entity isn't being hurt unfairly. The ideal is if there's a $20 billion gap, we get $21 billion, and everybody's held harmless plus some. That's the ideal. So this is one of the first times in a long time, and the last time we were in this predicament was 08, 09. We had a huge market downturn, and mid-year major in New York, Shen lost like $9 million as a part of the gap elimination. And at that point, President Obama was president, and huge federal stimulus came in, and quite frankly, you stopped the bleeding at that point and started the economic recovery much faster. So I think that's where a lot of people also now being hopeful that this will come in to stabilize things and then lend to the economic recovery, which we hopefully on the heel of a vaccine coming into place, you start to see more of that being occurring faster than not. So and all that's a timing piece, because here we sit in December, and typically the governor will come out with his budget proposal first, second week in January, but already the governor it's been reported, let me say that because I didn't directly hear him say it, been reported that he's trying to wait as long as he possibly can to make an announcement to see if the stimulus funds come in. Because the worst thing you could do is say, okay, we're making a budget on these bad news, and then tomorrow you get good news, but you already made a commitment to the bad news. So I understand that dynamic. So that's why the timing becomes important for us. And so as we here at Shen, in fact, we had a couple meetings today that's focused on budget. We're still very much building our budget from the perspective of preserving programs. So we're not building the budget from the perspective of, oh, okay, if we have to face a 20% reduction in state aid, what are the things we're going to cut? Because it's not only some mindset that drives things, but it's also the same mindset that forces us to look at data differently. If we're looking at data from the standpoint of what can be cut, it's easier to identify a lot of things. If we're looking at the mindset of how do you preserve programs, then we have to be much more tactical and strategic in the decision that we make. One is much harder than the other. It's easy to slash and burn. It's much more challenging to dissect things and carefully analyze things. And so, give you a perfect example of that. Kathy Chase and her team create all sorts of reports, and Elizabeth, Dr. Wood, and Kathy and I were on a call today looking at staffing. And so why that's important. About 80% of our budget is salary and benefits. We hire people to do the jobs. And so we're trying to break that down into all the potential units as we can to analyze those pieces to see where our potential savings or reallocation or repurposing of funds, with the notion, again, trying to preserve programs, recognizing we may very well have the same budget footprint, but what we do within that footprint becomes important. So that's a lot of time being spent on that, with all these uncertainties still looming in terms of where the federal stimulus dollars coming. If it comes to New York, what's the implication for New York? And all those factors are at play. So this year, like last year, is also another unique year, and we still have, for this school year, the 2021 school year, the looming 20% reduction hanging over our heads, because that was supposed to be for this year, and it hasn't been executed yet, and I hope it's not going to be executed at all, and I hope it's not going to be a situation that is kicked down the road and executed in 21, 22, because, quite frankly, it's definitely then setting up schools for continued situation where they can't effectively meet the needs of kids. And so I think all the parties, all the players, be it at the federal level, the state level, certainly here at the local level, everyone is trying to figure out how do we best maneuver to preserve program for kids. Timing is going to be so key in so many things. we know that the transition of power at the federal level won't occur until, quite frankly, it'll be February 1 once people settle in. However, we're watching those tea leaves to see how shortly after that, or quite frankly, if they even pass some legislation prior to that, that'll be even better because then we have some sense of what we're going into the January sequence with versus waiting for February and March because, quite frankly, by end of February, first part of March, we need to have a budget to present to the board, to get adopted by the board, to prepare for the budget vote in May. So timing becomes an important piece of it. So that's the added factor that we have to take in consideration when we think about the budget. But today's piece from the Board of Regents was an interesting one. When you look at it, you kind of say, well, why would they do that? And I think it's part of one of those kind of things. How do we could present a very idealistic proposal, or we could present something that's somewhat realistic, which is still going to be a challenge for us at Shen and still be a challenge for other school districts as well, because, as I said, implied in that, when you talk about a 2-year difference or expenditures that has occurred over those 2 years or increases in expenditures over those 2 years. So we're watching those things, and hopefully after the new year, we have a better handle on things. Quite frankly, I'm hoping after next week because I'm hearing there's a lot of conversation happening right now, and I hope that would be a holiday present to the nation, that there's some kind of significant stimulus package. Because not only schools, we're talking about payroll issues, people who were getting some compensation, not getting any compensation, and those kind. So it's a huge, huge impact that lends to economic stimulus as well. So I think we're all watching that very closely. So let me pause there if there are any questions that you may have or board members may have.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a quick question. I'm not sure if maybe you answered it, Dr. Robinson. You said the federal stimulus, you said, how much timing and strings attached. I'm curious to know what the strings attached.
Well, I mean, so every time somebody gives some money, it's going to be for certain things. Yeah.
In terms of like districts.
Well, see, that becomes the state piece, right? And that's why I said it's like two different set of politics. Actually, it's three different set of politics, to be quite frank with you. Because in New York, you have the politics of the governor, how the Constitution is written. The governor puts out a budget bill, and then you have the politics of the state legislature as well. And so you have all those. So once funds come into New York, the question then is who will be pulling the strings, the proverbial strings, so to speak. And right now, under the existing state of emergency piece, the governor has quite frankly, the dominant authority, but that will change. I'm hoping, I'm assuming, it will be changed because that was only for a certain time frame, and then the state legislature would have to kick back in gear, which kind of puts our advocacy, typical advocacy, in an awkward situation, because who do we really talk to in terms of impact? And so typically this time of year, particularly this meeting, I would have been coming to the board. So here's our advocacy things. Right now, everyone statewide is saying, let's see what happened with the federal funds, and let's see what the states start talking about. And so the maintenance of effort is one thing that I think everyone wants to make sure that whatever funds comes into the state of New York, the state of New York is consistent about making sure education get its fair share of those funds. The 20% state aid is a big piece that everyone is still talking about. If we could avoid that, particularly if we get federal funds, 20% reduction in state aid, that's a big piece. And then a silent piece, but yet it's getting a lot of traction recently, is there was a ruling by the state education department based upon current law that basically saying that rejecting transportation aid for March to June, because they're saying, well, schools are in session. However, by law, we could not terminate people by law. So we were paying transportation personnel. And so there's a big lobbying effort now for the legislature to change that so that schools can, in fact, get transportation aid. And for us, it's a pretty significant dollar amount, potential loss in aid. And so we're also lobbying that quite a bit, too, because that will be impacting current year. And so there's some current year issues we're dealing with as we plan for next year as well, because clearly we're trying to also be as I don't want to say conservative with our approaches, but we're certainly analyzing every opportunity to try to save as much so we can have more capacity to build forward with than not into the next year. As you know, we built this year's budget very tightly. So when you have a tight budget, you don't have a lot of margins, so to speak. And so we're really looking at those things now to see how to create more margins, more capacity to hopefully build, again, another tight budget on that to a point where maybe 2 years out, we're back at a place economically that we can get back into more of how do we build forward versus just simply trying to preserve what we have.
So my question is, well, actually, first, with the foundation aid, so we haven't seen a 20% cut with foundation
Not yet.
aid. Only the expense-based aids, like the transportation.
Right now, the only thing that's proposed to not get aided potentially is certain portions of transportation aid from that March to June period. However, there's a deadline on the 17th, which is Thursday, that the governor's office is looking for data. So people are listening now, and we anticipate something is going to occur, because how can you tell schools you can't do one thing and then we're going to penalize you for doing the thing that we compelled you to do?
So-
It logically doesn't make sense.
So was the 20% then just transportation aid from the spring?
Now, the
Or was
20%
the
is,
the other aid
so the
categories?
20% is kind of like, it's a folklore, right? The reason why I say that, because it depends on who's telling the story. So the state has never come out to say, is it going to be 20% of all aid? Or is it going to be 20% of only foundation aid? And regardless, so if it's only foundation aid, for Shen, it's about $5 million roughly. If it's all of our aids combining 20% off those, it's now $9.4 million. Either way, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to kick you in 1 Shen or 2 Shens. It's still going to hurt. So I hate to use that kind of analogy. So the 20%, it will hurt significantly if it happens this year, and it will have a huge impact on how we plan for 2021.
So what is the timeline for payments for foundation aid? What points in the year do we?
So our biggest aid payment typically occurs in March.
Okay.
And so that's why this becomes somewhat fearful, and the timing becomes important, because, back to Mrs. Miller's question, or the strings attached, because funds that come in, remember, the school fiscal year is different from the state fiscal year, which is different from the federal fiscal year. So you're talking about 3 different calendars in the sequence. So the state fiscal year is April, and so if funds come in one fiscal year of the state, how do they, quote unquote, put that on the books? Is it for this year, or is it for potential next year? And for us as a school, April is still very much in our fiscal year, that fiscal year that ends in the end of June. So that's also, the timing sequence becomes important in terms of how that fund is being used. Is it going to be used to shore up and avoid the 20% reduction this year, and then the state put forth another budget for 2020 that impacts our 2021 in an adverse way? So the timing becomes important, because whatever they do, we need to know so we can plan ahead. If it's good news, we take advantage of it. It's bad news, we try to avoid the bad news getting worse. So that's why I say the timing piece is critical in all those equations.
Okay, thank you.
I know Mr. Gilbert's on the line. I don't know if you had any questions.
Todd, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Uh,
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button.
So I just want to transition, if you don't mind, Mr. Stevens. I just want to continue. Just can't see this for a second here. So we've been talking about the process for, as you so eloquently addressed and gave the right condolences to the DeLallo family last week. And just for the segue, I had the good fortune of meeting with Carol DeLallo last week. You know, she's funny. She came to drop off Gary's Chromebook. And you know, it's one of those kind of things that is so surreal, right? Because you're like, wow, you know, this is crazy. And so I had a great chance to talk to her a little bit, and you know, and talk about those kind of things. And probably 3 or 4 times easily in the conversation, she made reference to the significant impact, the service to the district, the significant impact it had on Gary as a person, and how he prided himself on being a member of the Shen board. And so I want to share that sentiment with you, because that's one of the things that she kept saying over and over, that this was one of the things that he prided himself on most, other than his kids, in terms of the being impactful. So as we sit now and talk about the process to fill that vacancy, just wanted to walk through quickly for the board, and we have had some of these conversations. Um, Essentially, there are two options under education law, and the board needs to exercise one of the two options within a 90-day window. So the 90-day window actually triggers on, I think it was November 21st, which was the passing of Mr. Delalo on that date, if I'm not mistaken, that Saturday. So we have time, but there's a 90-day window. So two options. One is to appoint, one is to call for a special election. It's very rare that people call for a special election because you got to go through all the process that you would go through elections, the voting process, all these kind of things. And quite frankly, that's why people don't do it, because it's a long and expensive process. So typically, and we have done it here since I've been Superintendent Shen, twice now during the vacancy through interview process. And so I'm just gonna, so as you see here on the screen, let me just turn a little bit. It's a process where if we go through the appointment process, the majority of the vote board will have a chance to essentially interview candidates. We have sheets, criteria sheets. It's a very structured process for candidates to go in. After tonight, we'll put a notice on the website to say if the board approves what's being recommended, to say that we're formally accepting individuals who have an interest in the board. Once they send that interest, then we have another letter that we send to them to say, here's the process, here's some questions we want you to answer, and the whole structure begins. And at some point, we need to establish a timeline, or there's a suggested timeline, but we need to finalize that timeline in terms of when we're going to do interviews and things of that nature, probably some point late January, early February timeframe as we move forward. So these are the two options, essentially, that's available for the board to look at. One is the special election. One is the appointment of a qualified person. Recognizing that the person, if we go through the process, the person appointed, be it in January or February, would need to run for re-election in May. So the appointment is from whenever the board does it, January or February, until the May election. And right now, we have for the May election, Mr. Presley will be up for re-election. Mrs. Rajat will be up for re-election. And then the unexpired term, which was after July 1, it will be 1 year left on the expired term from Mr. Delalo. So that's a big piece for people to understand. And how the sequence goes is somewhat counterintuitive, or in a sense when you think about it. So the May 18th election, the two highest vote getters, so assumption that Mr. Presley and Mrs. Rajat are number 1 and 2 respectively, however you want to put them, are tied for the top 2. It doesn't matter, right? Those top 2 vote getters will get the 3-year terms. The third highest vote getter will get the 1-year term. However, the third highest vote getter will be appointed to the board at the next board meeting. So if the election is on May 18th, the next board meeting, and I didn't look at the calendar sequence, but say if we have the next board meeting at the beginning of June, that person will be appointed to start right away. So we have the full complement of 7. So that person will fill out their complete until from June until the end of June, and will then continue for the 1-year vacancy of that term. So that person comes aboard right away after the election, because if you have those 2 people, so someone new comes on board, they're appointed at the reorganizational meeting in July. So they'll be picking up the terms from July, the 3-year terms from July on. And so that's why sometimes I say, why does a third place person start first? Because that's how the sequence of things has to occur. So that's why I say, and you think about it logically, it doesn't make sense until you start thinking about, oh, okay, that's why those pieces. And so if this case, if we have 2 incumbents win, those incumbents just be reappointed in July. If you have newcomers, they'll be appointed. First and second place will be appointed in July for 3-year terms.
You clarified it. When you said third vote getter, I didn't know if everybody would understand what you were saying.
The third highest vote, yes. I'm sorry, the third highest vote getter. So in
The lowest, actually.
The lowest.
The lowest, yeah.
So yes, I'm glad you clarified that. So I was kind of like high, not so high, and yeah. So the third person would get that. So that's the interesting little quirky piece that happened. So tonight on the agenda, the recommendation is to go through the appointment process, the interview process, the appointment process, and if the board agrees with that, we'll start that process. As I said, tomorrow will be official on the website to say that the board approved to go through this process. And if you have an interest, and quite frankly, we ought to have at least maybe 2 individuals who already sent emails saying, hey, I have an interest in running to the board, and they'll probably do it again just so we can have it from the official time frame. Not saying that their interest wasn't official. It doesn't matter. If they've expressed an interest, once we get the names, then we put them into the pool of how do we provide information to them. So we'll see how that is. Again, this is the second time we've gone through that process here at Shen since I've been superintendent, and it works fairly smoothly in terms of making sure that we have a very consistent set of questions, so eliminate bias from the process and those kind of things. Everyone gets the same questions, same time frame, and we go through the process. The board vote and members vote independently, and it's a mathematical tally in terms of who gets yay or nay. It's a mathematical, and if it's a tie, then we go through a process again. So it's designed to be very objective, which I think is important for people to know that it's a very objective process that we'll be going through if we do the appointment. It's not just like, hey, I have a friend who's an interest, the board appoint the person. No, there's a very formal process that we have to go through. So any questions related to that?
Do we share out, or do we share with the public who's being interviewed?
So the answer is say this way. There's nothing that prohibits us from not doing so, but I don't foresee us saying, hey, these are the final people running for the board. I think it become pretty public because it'll be a meeting in the public when the interviews process are taking place. The only time it goes to executive session is when we go back and do the individual tally, and Mrs. Chase, as a district clerk, will be the person that takes over the process to make sure that the tally was fair and objective and accurate and all those kind of things. Then the board comes out of executive session and make that announcement again in public session. So the interview process is a public piece, so to speak, because it is someone who represents themselves in terms of why they want to be a board member and some various questions that we have developed over the years working through New York State School Boards Association that speaks to the qualities or the salient qualities that we're looking for in board members.
So the interview is public?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be a special meeting, or it could be a special meeting called before a regular board meeting, or just a special meeting altogether. Right now, I'm leaning thinking that we probably have a special meeting because if you think about a 7 o'clock board meeting, and I know it's always a challenge for people to get here at 5 o'clock because we all have lives and work, right? And you all have lives and work. So it's probably picking a night where we only, on the item on the agenda will be that process. So I'll be talking to Mrs. Stevenson and Mrs. Rajat and trying to hammer out some time frames after the board approves this process, and then we have a timeline to share out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So that would be, sorry, so that would be, we go the full 90 days? We have to wait the full 90 days?
Now, we'll probably be at that point maybe 60 days into it. So yeah, because I mean, part of it is, frankly, it's good to just have another person on board anyway. Because, I mean, so yes, we have 4 board members here in person tonight and 1 virtual. If we didn't have the virtual option, we only have 4 board members.
Yeah.
And we always run issues concerned about quorums and those kind of things. So trying to get this process done becomes important. Fair enough, Mrs. Egan, on that?
I'm good.
Thank you.
Just to transition again, the second topic I want to transition completely away from this. So the recommendation for that is, as you know, there's a lot of conversation surrounding COVID testing, and this presentation is a version of the one I shared with the board last time, and I'm keeping the same presentation format and updating it as information change. And literally, information seems to be changing every day in terms of what's happening from the state level. So I'm not going to go through all the details of this presentation because some of you have seen before, but just to highlight some recent changes in this piece of it. This one is kind of hard to see. This is actually a slide from the governor's press briefing last Friday. And while it's hard to see, the big piece is they were trying to emphasize that a large majority of the COVID cases are coming from household contacts, not from schools. And that's an important point because if you pick up the newspaper right now, if you go and listen to the news, you hear about schools that are shutting down, going remote. And I get that question probably 10 times a day. And I can't speak to why people make those decisions, but a large majority of the reason why those decisions are happening is because of staffing capacity. In other words, people being quarantined and not available to provide the supports that they need. Which also then, I would use this an opportunity to say kudos to starting with Mrs. Carmen and starting with all the administrators who when we have a case, people drop everything and dig deep to make sure that we really, really try to contain the quarantine to those people who need to be quarantined and not just do a big wide brush stroke because it's just easier to do a wide brush stroke. And so it's a lot of work. I mean, each case probably take 2-3 hours easily to do that piece of it. And so we're trying to be careful because we can't have just by, being cavalier about it, someone who the only thing they did wrong today was show up to work. And if they don't have to be quarantined, why? So it's the public health piece, and it's also the practical realities of that too. So knock on wood, we've been making a lot of adjustments to keep our schools open. That's our intent. Almost back to the budget comment, we're starting from the perspective of preserving programs. So we look for opportunities so we can preserve programs. We're starting from the perspective of keeping our schools open and our schools safe. So we're looking for opportunities to keep our schools open and our schools safe. And I think this slide was one that I was pleased to hear the governor, again, publicly acknowledging that schools themselves aren't COVID clusters or spreader events, and that's how we want to keep it. So that's why I put this slide in here. The big thing that also came out of this was a change in the zones. So 3 zones: yellow zone, orange zone, red zone. And so it goes by degree of severity. Red zone, as the color implies, is hot, hot, hot. Orange is okay, and yellow is cautionary, right? And so they changed it that now that schools are no longer required to shut down. And the reason why, because the data is showing that schools aren't COVID clusters. And so why shut down the place that's not, versus we know that most of the cases, and back to Mr. Gilbert's comment earlier about the holidays, is quite frankly true. It's what's happening in household gatherings, or now we're starting to see in some certain types of events that take place outside of school where people aren't being as diligent about wearing masks and those kind of things. And even now, we've changed our protocols that if someone if someone in my household is waiting for a test because you have symptoms or you know that you have direct exposure, you're waiting for test results, and we're telling that person, you as an employee, don't come to work until you know what's that situation, because the last thing you want to do, somebody in your house, oh yeah, my so-and-so got the test result back, it was positive, and you've been to work 2 days, and you get a test result and find out you were positive too, and now we've exposed all those people for 2 days. And so we have taken that extra step as a system. We're not required to do it, but we're taking that extra step, and yes, it does put a burden sometime on our staffing. However, that's where the health and safety piece comes in. I'd rather have the burden of saying, okay, we may have to have some people cover some things that we typically don't cover, and avoid a situation of people being unnecessarily exposed to those situations. So that's one of the things that we've changed even on our health certification piece. There's a new number that talks about those kind of things, particularly when we know it's not a situation where I'm going to have a medical procedure and because of the medical procedure I'm waiting for my COVID test. It's because you know that you were with someone and they're positive, and there's a good likelihood that you're going to go and you're having symptoms, and you're just simply waiting for that confirmation that what your symptoms are is what you thought. And so there's a difference between those scenarios. So I share that with you because we're trying to do the things to avoid being in a situation that one, we're unfairly and unduly and unjustly exposing people. And two, that we can make sure our schools are safe, the environment continue to be as safe as you possibly can under the circumstances. Another big change, again, I want to highlight is, I'm just going to skip through these, is that the designation has changed. 2 weeks ago, everything was about 3%. Everybody was watching it. When will area go over 3%? Right now, I think Saratoga County is nearing 6%. And so that's a significant shift from last time we had a board meeting here. But now the hospitalization is a big part of that equation. So you're talking about the capacity piece of it. And so that's why designations are slower to come than in the beginning. And so today's Tuesday, I think it was Friday, the governor also designated some new orange zone areas, some places in western New York, some places down.
Yesterday. Yesterday.
Yesterday was yesterday. They did it.
Yeah,
Sorry, Monday.
yeah,
Monday.
yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Press release, press conferences. So we're watching this very closely to see what does this mean for us as well. So it's gonna make some sense in a second because we're watching these changes in definition as we move forward. The big difference between the red and the yellow zone is the percentage of people we have to test and how long we have to test them for. So it become a bi-weekly thing versus if you're in the red zone, it's 30%, and then you have to do it over a month period until your number is below the area number for a longer period of time. So there's a lot of matrix that go into this. And so again, I want to share that without going into details. And this presentation, by the way, is linked to the board agenda too, so people can certainly grab that down. So those are big changes. No change to the yellow zone. The yellow zone is still using the 3%, but the different factor is the hospitalization factor. Because we've certainly in the county, we're beyond 3%. Certainly in the communities that make up the Shen, Half Moon, and Clifton Park, we're beyond the 3%. And so the question is the hospitalization capacity piece that we're watching this equation. So again, I'm not going to go through the entire presentation on this piece of it because I want to go back to the piece that we're in the process of right now. Oops. You should have, we just sent out a list Shen and a video, and we created, and it's kind of hard to see this document, but certainly it's on the district website, it's on Facebook, Twitter. Mrs. Shannon does a great job of mass distribution of critical information. But we created this Q&A document that talks about the testing process. So on the agenda tonight is an MOU agreement with Saratoga County. So once the board acts on that agenda, on that MOU, I'll sign 2 copies of it for tomorrow, send that to the county. Hopefully the county would turn that around fast, sign this signature on it, so that we could get what they call a LSL number, which is essentially the ability for us, school district, to become a testing site. And once we get that, then we can start making all our submissions to the State Department of Health for their portal where all the data sets have to go through, as well as we could put an email on to request rapid test. So time frame. If we send this to the county tomorrow on Wednesday, the county turns around and sign that, and we get that back Thursday with their LSL number. The minute we get back that, we're shooting an email to DOH to say right now we anticipating about 2,000 rapid tests, and so far DOH has been very good about getting those tests into schools. And so just again, hypothetical time frame, right? So if we get that to DOH and DOH gets on Friday, there's a good possibility by next week, some point, we'll have 2,000 rapid tests on site. That's step 1 and 2 combined. Step 1 is the MOU and getting the LSL number from the county. We have to get that first. Step 2 is having a rapid test on site. It's not as fast as you think, by the way. It's just preparing for those things. We're also now in the process of step 3, and we start to have some initial conversation with our nurses. Step 3, and as I say, we're in the process of is developing a very detailed plan in terms of how we would execute a testing protocol. So that's the step 3 piece. Step 4, we're also in the process of right now, because starting tomorrow, parents will start to get an email that says, basically, we want you to consent to testing. And how the email is designed is that if you ignore it today, you're going to get it again tomorrow. If you ignore it tomorrow, Mrs. Stevenson, you're going to get it again on Monday. And if you ignore it Monday, you're going to get it Tuesday and Wednesday too. And we might even send it to you as Christmas Day just for the sake of saying, please say yes or no. So it's designed, quite frank with you, to ask people to please respond. And I'm also right now asking people to please consent to this process, because if we 20%, and we're doing the math right down to the T, but using 2004 conversation point, if we have to test 2,000 people, we want to have a pool twice that size, minimally twice that size. Because once we get the pool of people who consent, it's a random selection from that pool. So not everyone who consent will necessarily be tested, because it's a random selection from that pool to eliminate bias, or quite frankly, what you're game playing with the process as well. So we're in the process, and that email will start going out, that consent form, and it's the same way that parents now get the self-certification one for the kids. In fact, it's going to look very similar. It's the same company. It's not the same email, but very similar from the same company that we use, because it gives us the data. We could analyze the data faster, because it comes back into a database, and that's the reason why we're going through that same process. So that step is going, and once we have our pool, and fast forward, so we come back after the holidays, if we have a designation for yellow, orange, or red zone, we will have all the pieces ready to execute. And so that's the reason why we're going through this progression. And the ready to execute isn't one of those things that we wake up on a Monday, the governor makes a designation that we have to start doing all this thing on Tuesday. It's not that abrupt. You have a window that you can start unfolding this, and we want to be able to unfold it in a way that's measured, in a way that we can control what we need to do, make sure we have accuracy of the test data, accuracy of the individual who are being tested. All those things come in. So it's not going to be, oh my God, Saratoga County is this, we all got to jump the gun. That's why we're doing all these steps well in advance, so we be prepared to execute in a way that we execute most things we do, in a very measured way, and not in a rush type way, because we try to do a lot of pre-planning. So that's a big piece, and this Q&A document is a good one. It addresses, and by the way, this Q&A document is based upon a lot of experiences at places who have already gone through this. That's almost kind of like, what's the one thing you wish you would have known before that you know now? And so the Q&A kind of addressed some of those kind of things. I wish information they would have provided people. Even like the, description of it's a nasal swab. Quick. And I had a shoulder thing, and I had to do that to go and get my shoulder test out when I went to the hospital. Quick, and you get your results. Quick, put in a little thing, you wait 15 minutes, and I think it's 2 lines you're positive, 1 line you're negative, and if you're negative, if we're doing testing during school, if a parent come to get you, go to the doctor. If you're a staff, you go home, and then the whole process starts. We want to make sure that people do a second test to confirm those, positive, to confirm those positives, again, particularly if you're not showing any symptoms, because like anything else, there's a potential of false negative, false positive, and that's why the due diligence in the process becomes important. And again, I want to kudos out to our nursing staff. Those folks have been doing a lot of work that's way different than anticipated, and I would say for the most part, they're all geared up to take on this new added piece of it, and also to our school physician who's on board to provide some advice. And so a lot of people will be gearing up to execute this process with the type of fidelity that we need this process to be executed with. And so those are the steps that we're going through right now, and that's why this Q&A went out, to give people some of those questions, and more detailed plans will be communicated once we are ready for those detailed plans to be communicated. So a lot of things are happening simultaneously. Exposure to training, the SLL, once we order tests, having those people on board, all those kind of things, we're gearing up, having the process ready. So when we hit the switch, we'll be ready to have lights on and game time. Thoughts, questions?
No, just a comment. I got my email this afternoon from Mr. Agostinoni, so it's already gone out, at least at the high school.
So again, it's a lot of different things, but again, kudos to a lot of people. I'm here in the face of the explanation, but it's a lot of people behind the scenes doing a lot of work to make sure that we do these things and do these things right and do these things well. So we
Hey,
look at that.
quick
Yes,
question.
sure.
In the event a parent says no to having their child tested, we have a record of that, so we would go and if the child was randomly picked, we would say, nope, we're gonna go on to the next one, or how's that gonna?
Now, the only people will be in the pool are people who consent.
Okay.
So there will be no possibility of that existing. And also,
Just in school, not CDL, correct?
right now, and I say right now, right now the focus is in-person staff or students. But I got to tell you that conversation is already shifted, and the reason why it's shifting is because we're seeing the more and more CVL kids are testing positive than kids are in
I
person.
know, it's fun.
The trend
It's
is
not
going
funny,
the
but,
opposite
oh my
way,
God,
which
I
is
can't believe
interesting.
it.
And so when you think about that, if we really want to get a sense of what's the community exposure, we really need to get a sense of the community exposure. So again, it's not on the books yet, so I don't want anyone to misinterpret it, but I could be clairvoyant at some point. I wouldn't be surprised that the next update be coming. Guess what? We need, because that's where the trend is showing right now, which is problematic when you think about that.
It makes sense, because if they're saying community spread is your living room spread, then the kids that are at home, that's gonna be higher.
They're seeing a lot of that
Right.
piece of it. So yes, Mr. Gilbert, so the possibility of that should be an impossibility, because we're only people going to be in the pool of people consent.
Thank you.
So I want to share the whole backdrop with the board, so when you get to the agreement piece, you have some sense of how this agreement fit into the larger schema of what we are planning over the course of the next several weeks. And you know what? Right now, we could test, and I'm not saying that we are or not doing this. I don't want people to misinterpret it, because sometimes people hear things, and they said, I heard the superintendent said, the law or the mandates or the executive order allow us to execute a testing process without being in a designated zone. And I say that because I have no idea what the next several weeks are going to bring. I have no idea what after the holidays is going to bring, and how does that impact us. And if we have all our proverbial ducks lined up, so to speak, all the steps in place, we may well decide to do A or B in certain sequence to try to get a better handle on things as we move forward. And also, I have no idea how this will possibly change with the introduction of vaccines into the state, because they may very well change things to say, how do we get a better handle of where the potential real cases are, and how do we infuse vaccine differently. So I'm sure there are many factors that will come into play in the coming days and weeks. So that's all I had, Mr. Stevenson. Sorry, way more time than anticipated, but I thought it was some important information to share off.
Are we going right into Kathy's?
Yeah, if there are questions on the claim report, Mrs. Chase is on the line to address them. If not, there's
No, it's pretty
no need to.
straightforward. But I'll let Kathy speak.
All right, so I guess I'm moving on. Mrs. Carmen, front center. So as Mrs. Carmen's walking up, we're looking at the first reading of our policies. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? None. Do you have anything you want to mention?
No, just that we have the policies that are going for first reading tonight are ones that went to November's policy review meeting.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Oh, sorry.
I got an education from Dr. Robinson. 4 years on the board now.
And then, not a lot of big changes, because most of them were done, but we're back, done 4 years ago, excuse me. So we're on our 4-year cycle. Every 4 years, every policy is reviewed.
Well, that's why I'm asking you that. 4 years in. You know?
Every 4 years. And also, I really just want to say one thing. I know that, there is a lot of work going in with the COVID, but if it wasn't for the support of Dr. Robinson, the Board of Education, and my colleagues, the COVID response team, and all the administrators, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we're doing. So it's a team effort, for
It
sure.
certainly is. It certainly is. But
Thank
thank you for everything. And we mean that from the bottom of our heart. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Consent items. Treasurer's report.
A motion.
Right? Yeah. Let's do it. Okay, can I have a motion on the treasurer's report? Gus is first, Bob is second. Any thoughts, considerations? Yes.
I think it's always good to look at this report
Mhm.
on the graph, because what I noticed on this one is that we're sort of where we should be in terms of what we're spending. So, into the year, we have to be very conscious of where the money is, how we're using it. But this
Right
is a
there.
great chart because we're slightly above previous years, but not.
Not crazy. Yeah. No. Pretty steady, Eddie.
Yeah. So we're actually behind, which sounds great. It's the first month, but that's kind of a.
We can't count that yet. Right.
We're on track. And that's those that we're balancing out, and a couple of these things are actually, we're voting on change orders that we're not spending as much as we usually plan.
Right.
That's money we could
Reallocate it.
somewhere else.
Yep.
As we proceed this year.
Yep. Good point.
Good example of money management.
Yep, good perception, Bob. Okay, can I have a motion? Did I do it
We
already?
already did that.
I did it. Bob is first. I think Gusta was second, right? Okay. Okay. All in favor? Todd, you're good. Okay, thank you. All right. Minutes. Oh, I'm so sorry about this, Vanessa. No, it's not. No, it's not. November 10th. I think Christina was here. Everybody was here. Okay, can I get a motion on November 10th? Gusta's first. Gusta's, okay. Todd is first, Gusta's second. Any comments? Hearing none, all, wow, I'm not in tonight. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Minutes from November 24th. Todd was absent. Okay, Christina was here on virtual?
No.
Absent. Okay, Christina and Todd were absent. Okay, so can I get a motion? Naomi first, Bob is second, Todd abstains.
I think you speak up.
All in favor? Aye. December 1st. Christina was.
21st? The 24th?
See,
I
that's what
just
we
did
just
the
did.
24th. Come on, Naomi, now you're starting to just throw me off now. All right,
It worked.
December did. December 1st, Christina was absent, Todd was with us. Okay, can I get a motion? Too bad, Todd. Gusta's first, Bob is second. No comments or questions, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Action items. Number one, process to fill BOE vacancy. That is what Dr. Robinson discussed tonight. We are in full, and I want to just mention that the Board of Education is in full awareness of the situation and understands the letter of the law. So, can I have a motion on that to pass? Naomi's first, Gusta's second. Any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? Todd? Thank you. Motion passes. Bids, we got 3. Recap tires and tire-related services, copy paper, groceries 2. Can I have a motion? Any comments or questions? Okay, can I get a motion? Thank you. Gusta's first. Naomi second. No comments or questions. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, Todd. Number 3, charter approvals, ECA clubs. Can I get a motion? Bob is first. Gusta is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
I did have a comment. So these are even if they're not running, it's just to reinstate them.
And most of them, they think we run at some point, if not run already. In fact, when you see on the agenda, there's quite a few club advisors as well on this agenda.
I saw in staffing that there was some,
yeah.
I saw that.
So
Okay.
either that we are running, anticipate running, so we're going to have, every year's the annual process, we go through
Okay.
the charters.
Sure. Okay, I guess all in favor, sorry.
Did we all right,
We haven't done all in favor yet.
all in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Number 4, authorization of bank depositories. Can I get a motion? Bob is first. Naomi second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Todd?
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay. Number 5, disposal of obsolete furniture, equipment, and textbooks. Can I get a motion? Gusta's first. Gusta's first, Bob is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, number 6, donation playground. Can I get a motion? Bob is first, Gus is second. Any comments? With gratitude, I'm sure, with this?
So these are the ones that were approved for 2016? They were several years back. and
Yeah,
they're just
Connie.
We
all
first
one
had a
big group.
conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Thanks, Todd. Number 7, scholarship and local grant donation with gratitude. Can I get a motion? Naomi's first, Bob is second. Comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. Number 8, risk assessment report. Can I get a motion? Bob is first, Gus is, Naomi second, sorry. Any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? Motion passes. Number 9, change order. Can I get a motion? Bob is first, Gus is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Number 10, intermunicipal agreement for COVID testing, what Dr. Robinson was explaining tonight. Can I have a motion?
Yes.
Todd is first, Gus is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Intermunicipal agreement for special education services. Can I get a motion? Gus is first, Bob is second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Students, here come Mrs. Mylod, acceptance of special education placements. Does anybody have any?
Yep, go ahead.
Does anybody have any comments for Mrs. Mylod? Okay, can I get a motion? Gus is first, Naomi second. Comments or questions? We had none, so all in favor?
Yep.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Mylod. Okay. Personnel, Mrs. Bush, approval of staffing and tenure recommendations.
Yes, good evening. We have 3 teachers that are eligible for tenure. They were what we would call off-cycle. Their probationary periods, they were perhaps hired in January. And that would be Jessica George, special education. Her tenure recommendation was written by Andy Hills at Orangen. Amanda Larkin, elementary education is her tenure area. She's also at Orangen. Mr. Hills has been very busy. And Corey Moon, tenured or recommendation for tenure in music at Orangen. And Mr. Roselli and Mr. Hills wrote that recommendation. So we had the 3 tenure recommendations. And we have some retirements that I'd like to just acknowledge. Kelly DeFisciani was on a board meeting before. Her date has been moved to 2/12/21. Terry Gallego is retiring after 20 years as a teacher aide in special education. Bridget Gallup is retiring after 26 years as a senior school monitor. Karen Gibbons is retiring after 30 years as a teacher aide. John Lemire, retiring after 13 years as a bus driver. And Barbara Meager is retiring after 27 years as a typist. Those are the retirements on the board agenda.
I caught everybody. I'd like to, huge congratulations to Barbara, Bridget, John. The 4th one, so I missed one. John, your first one after Kelly. I think you mentioned one.
Terry Gallego.
Terry, yeah. So huge congratulations of the years of service that you've put here at Shenendehowa in our community. And I just want to acknowledge once again, Mrs. DeFisciani, Kelly, you will truly be missed. But look, we're moving the date out. I love it. Just keep moving the date out. Just keep moving the date out. So we just want you to know we love you, and really huge congratulations, really, on your next life, and you will be sorely missed. Okay. And the tenures, huge congratulations to all our Orangen peeps. Okay, can I get a motion? Gustus first, Bob is second. I'm sure we all offer our congratulations. Can I get a motion? All in favor?
Yes.
Motion passes. And Mrs. Carmen comes up for the second reading of policy. Any thoughts or questions? Great. Can I get a motion? Yeah. Gus, you beat that one. Gus was first, Bob is second this time. No comments or questions? All in favor? Motion passes. I thought that was some holiday fun. Anybody join me on that? All right. So I don't believe we have any further public comments.
Can I just make one quick comment?
Sure.
And thank you, Mrs. Stevenson, for your acknowledgement on behalf of the board for Kelly. And, you kind of jokingly said that we're going to keep pushing the date back, but I really do hope that we keep pushing the date back. Even though we're going through the process right now of interviewing candidates. We had interviews yesterday with 7 candidates, and we'll be deliberating tonight, actually. Some people already made a decision to try to maybe possibly doing it down to 4 to a next round of interviews, which we'll be asking you to participate with. So Mrs. Bush will be reaching out for those interviews on Monday. So this process is starting to unfold, and the reason why we want to do that because we want whomever the new person is to come in and tap into the tremendous knowledge and historical knowledge, particularly that Mrs. DeFiciano has to offer, which kind of goes to my comment. I know Kelly will be here for a couple more board meetings. However, it's for me, it's an interesting dynamic because of all the positions in the school district, this is the position that I work closest with. Mm-hmm. And it's not a disrespect to anyone else, but this is a position that this person has to be in my head and understand context of everything that we're doing because this person is a conduit to the community. And we joke sometimes, we make mistakes and we kind of laugh at it because we always say, how sometimes people be so hypercritical about things. People glad to point out the bad things, but the 1,000 positive things that you put out there, you rarely get a peep back. That's why I want to say thank you for that comment because, when you think about Kelly's role, it's an interesting role. She is most needed in the most critical crisis moments. And so she has to be the calm head to report crisis in a way to minimize it in the mind's eye of the public. And so when you really think about that role, it's a different role because you take all the stuff in that's happening around you and try to quickly make sense out of it. So when you give it to someone else, they too can make sense out of it and not having the overreactions or the emotional reactions to things. And we have obviously had our share of issues here. So I just wanted to also just piggyback on your comment about that because it's a critical role and Kelly leaves a tremendous legacy. And as we look to fill that position with whomever comes aboard, they'll have a great mentor for probably a month or so, which would be a great opportunity for us. And I appreciate the board being open to that piece of it, to create that mentoring overlap. Because this is one of those where we need to have that, so have the seamless progression of things as we move forward. So thank you to the board for that opportunity, and thank you to Kelly for her service now, her service for the next month and a half. And who knows, if we get lucky, might add another month to that too.
There you go.
So we never know. So thank you. So thank you for the indulgence.
Mm-hmm.
She's agreeing to that, by the way.
Yeah, I see her head nodding. Okay, for the good of the order, does anybody want to share anything tonight? Okay. With that, I will end it with just saying I wish you all a very safe, enjoyable holiday. I know it is different this year, but if we do what's right now, we will be able to enjoy many holidays going forward. And for those that are, are having a hard time this year, my prayers go out to you. But please stay safe and enjoy. Enjoy what we have in front of us because we are very, very fortunate. So, okay, motion to adjourn. Naomi first, Gus the second. All in favor? Meeting's over.